In the name of God, in this session, we want to explain one of the connecting matters to computational linguistics, which is lexicography. You should know about lexicography because it is a common subject in computational linguistics. Through this article, I want to give you some information about lexicography. Within the field of lexicography, there are numerous differences when it comes to the interpretation of the term lexicography, and the differences in determining the nature, extent, and scope of this term. Also, it is widely accepted that lexicography consists of two components: theoretical lexicography and the lexicographic practice. Different definitions of lexicography give no unambiguous reflection of this distinction and of the individual components. This paper looks at some prevailing diverse uses and interpretations of the word lexicography. This is followed by a proposal to ensure that a transformative, unified, and comprehensive interpretation of this concept. Okay, as it is clear in this the abstract of this article, here we will read some definitions about lexicography and its types, and we will read some details about the lexicography. The first section of this paper indicates a number of definitions of lexicography as found in general sources, specialized dictionaries, and scientific publications. These definitions reflect the prevailing interpretation of this term. It is clear that there are significant differences between some of the interpretation. In order to have a mutual point of departure when talking about lexicography, the need is indicated for a unified explanation of lexicography. Subsequently, this term is discussed in some detail, focusing on different components of lexicography, taking cognizance of the existing definition, as well as points raised in the preceding discussion. Suggestions are made for a new interpretation of the term that encompasses the majority of the relevant features. Please, when you are summarizing the sessions, you shouldn't summarize this paragraph because it is not important. In your summarization, you should just write those important points. For example, you should summarize the definitions. And here, this paragraph is not important, and you shouldn't mention it in your summarization. Sometimes I see that the students in their summarization mention such unimportant matter which are not important, and you shouldn't mention them in your summarization. You should just mention those, for example, definition, those features which are important without mentioning their examples. Current views on lexicography. When attempting to define a widely used concept like lexicography, it is important to take cognizance of some other existing definition in order to detect some of the mutual strength and weak points. This section will refer to a few definitions and paraphrases of lexicography from three categories of sources: general sources like the general language printed dictionaries and results from random Google searches; LSP dictionaries dealing with lexicography; and scientific discussion in the field of lexicography. And again, this paragraph is not important, and you shouldn't mention it in your summarization because it just gives you some information about the way which is presented in this article. Definitions in general sources. Here we will read some definitions about lexicography in general sources. The definitions or preferences given in general sources have to be regarded as important. because that is where the non-expert in lexicography finds information regarding the meaning of this word. Someone looking for such a definition, especially those found in random Google searches, has no guarantees as to the authorities of the definition or the expertise of the person who formulated it. The quality of these definitions shows significant differences, as it can be seen in the following randomly selected examples. Okay, here in this paragraph we see some features of the general sources. They are important because here in general sources we can see some definition of lexicography by non-expert persons, and here you can see its sources. But what are the example of definition of lexicography in general sources? Definition number 1: the practice of compiling dictionaries. It is one definition about lexicography in general sources. You should mention the definition in your summarization. This is an extremely unsatisfactory definition that makes no provision for the theoretical component and gives no details regarding the compilation process. The practice of compiling dictionaries. It is one of the definition of lexicography. Another definition: lexicography is the applied study of the meaning, evolution, and function of the vocabulary units of a language for the purpose of compilation in book form, in short, the process of dictionary making. Okay, here you can see another definition which says that lexicography, we consider lexicography as applied study of meaning, evolution, function of vocabulary units of a language for the purpose of compilation in book for, in short, the process of dictionary making. Okay, here in short it defined lexicography as the process of dictionary making. Also, better than the first definition, this definition also ignores reference to the theoretical component. Too strong a focus is placed on meaning. Not all dictionaries include items giving the meaning of the words. Definition number 3. Perhaps the simplest explanation of lexicography is that it is a scholarly discipline that involves compiling, writing, editing dictionaries. Okay, here we can see another features of lexicography, which is connected to the compiling, writing, and editing dictionaries. Lexicography is widely considered as an independent scholarly discipline, though it is a subfield within linguistics. Many consider lexicography to be divided into two related areas. The act of writing or editing dictionaries is known as practical lexicography. The analysis or description of the vocabulary of the particular language and the meaning that links certain words to others in a dictionary is known as theoretical lexicography. Theoretical lexicography is particularly concerned with developing theories regarding the structural and semantic relationship among words in the dictionary. Since it involves theoretical analysis of the lexicon, theoretical lexicography is also known as a meta-lexicography. Here we read some points about lexicography, which lexicography has two related areas. One of them the act of writing, editing dictionary, which is considered as the practical lexicography. When we want you to define the practical lexicography, you should say that the act of writing or editing dictionaries, which is practical lexicography. And when we analyze and describe the vocabulary of a particular language, and the meaning that links certain words to other in a dictionary is considered as the theoretical lexicography. And theoretical lexicography can serve as developing theories regarding the structural and semantic relationship among words in the dictionary. And here you can see another name for theoretical lexicography, which is meta-lexicography. A positive aspect of this definition is the distinction it makes between practical and theoretical lexicography. A negative aspect is that it regards lexicography as a subfield within linguistics. Other definition is that lexicography is divided into two related disciplines: practical lexicography and theoretical lexicography. Again, we have another definition for practical lexicography and the theoretical lexicography, but here we mention other features of these two types of lexicography. In the practical lexicography is the art or craft of compiling, writing, editing dictionaries. Okay, here you can see another definition for practical lexicography, which is connected to the compiling, writing, and editing dictionaries. Theoretical lexicography is the scholarly discipline of analyzing and describing the semantic, syntagmatic, and paradigmatic relationship within the lexicon vocabulary of a language. Syntagmatic and paradigmatic relationship is the features for the word. By syntagmatic relationship, we means, for example, consider this sentence. The relationship which exists between this word is syntagmatic relationship. And when, for example, here instead of 2 we can have 1, 3, and other numbers, the relationship between 2 and other numbers is considered as paradigmatic relationship. Other words which can come instead of this word are the paradigmatic, have a paradigmatic relationship with this word. Okay. Theoretical lexicography is the scholarly discipline of analyzing and describing the semantic, syntagmatic, and paradigmatic relationship with the lexicon or vocabulary of a language, developing a series of dictionary components and structures linking the data in dictionaries, the needs for information by users in a specific types of situation, and how users may best access to the data incorporated in printed and electronic dictionaries. This is sometimes referred to as meta-lexicography. Okay, here you can see some other features of lexicography. Following each definition, we can see some lines which explain about that definition. This is a fairly well-balanced definition reference to dictionaries as practical tools would have enhanced its quality. Another definition is the making of dictionaries. Lexicography is the making of dictionaries. This article for lexicography in the word book Van Dijk African Tales has a cross reference to meta-lexicography where the following definition is found. Okay, here is other definition for lexicography, which is not important. Okay, it is not important. No definition was given to account for a frequently used reference to lexicography as being an art of craft, an art or a craft as seen in the title of Land of Dictionaries, the art and craft of lexicography. Here you can see another definition for lexicography. By explaining the nature of this art or craft, albeit that definition 4 does refer to art or craft. Here we have explanation about that definitions. In this paper, we do not regard lexicography as an art or craft, albeit that specific skills and talents play an important role in the lexicographic practice. Definitions like 1.2 and 5 make no distinction between practical and theoretical lexicography. Okay, here we don't make any distinction between the practical and theoretical lexicography, and from all these definitions, no realistic interpretation of the nature and extent of lexicography is possible. No clarity can be found regarding the relation between lexicography on the one hand and on the other hand applied linguistic lexicology, encyclopedology, and terminology. In addition, conflicting comments are found regarding the status of lexicography as independent discipline. Definition to refer to the applied study. Okay, here we can see the analyzing of that definitions, of the above mentioned definitions. Definition 5 gives a cross-reference to meta lexicography that has lexicology as a synonym. Now, definition makes a reference to the fact that dictionaries as a product of lexicographic practice cover both language for general purposes and language for special purposes. It is important which the dictionaries as the products of lexicography cover both language for general purposes and the language for special purposes. Okay, therefore we have lexicography for a special purpose or for general purpose. This defines the reality that LSP lexicography, often referred to as terminography, also falls within the scope of lexicography. The fact that dictionary typology makes provision for encyclopedic dictionaries, like dictionaries that do not focus on the linguistic but rather the extra linguistic features, does not come to the fore in any of the definitions. Definition 3 and 4 make provision for theoretical and practical component of lexicography. The nature of the theoretical component is not clear at all, also there is a focus on the analysis of dictionaries and rightly so on the development of the series. The independence of lexicography is indicated in definition 3, but the same definition contradicts itself by indicating that lexicography is a subfield within linguistics. The average language user who can solve any one of these definitions, with the exception of definition number 4, which gives a reasonably well-balanced account of lexicography, will have an incomplete knowledge of the lexicography. And here you can see some weakness of the above definition, except the number 4. And the user consulting any combinations of these definitions will be confused. Clearly, the definition of the word lexicography is a random selection of sources aimed at the non-expert is totally insufficient. Okay, here we can see some explanation about the above mentioned definitions, about their shortcoming, about their strong point. You can see, you can read about that definitions. Dictionaries of lexicography. Here, when you want to summarize this paragraph, you should summarize it in about in 3 lines. You should just refer to those important points, which here we have instead of practical and theoretical lexicography, we have, for example, another definition about the lexicography, which they divided to dictionaries for a special purpose or for general purpose, and their definition is different. Dictionaries of lexicography. Specialized dictionaries of lexicography assist their users in a far better way. The Dictionary of Lexicography defines lexicography in this way. Here you can see another complete definition about lexicography, which gives you some important points about lexicography. The professional activity and academic field concerned with dictionaries and other references works. It has two basic divisions: lexicographic practice or dictionary making, and lexicographic theory or dictionary research. It continues with a more comprehensive description of both division, including a listing of several branches of lexicography, like author lexicography, bilingual lexicography, encyclopedic lexicography, specialist lexicography, scissors lexicography. By means of diagram, it divides dictionary research into four components: history, typology, criticism, and use. Whereas dictionary making is divided into three components: fieldwork, description, and presentation. You can see some parts, some different parts which are connecting to lexicography definition. However, one misses remarks regarding the user, the contents and the structures and the functions of the dictionaries, and in a dictionary described on the cover as a professional handbook or reference to different series of the lexicography. In lexicography, a dictionary of basic terminology and extensive treatment of the lexicography is found. The main issues referred to are the disciplinary status of lexicography, its correlation with other linguistic and non-linguistic disciplines, the scope of lexicographic description, methodology of lexicographic investigation, typology of reference works produced within the framework of lexicography, techniques of lexicography's representation. Different perspectives on the position of lexicography are also given, with an indication of the relevant literature, not repeated here. Lexicography is regarded as a domain of applied linguistics, a branch of information science, a province of philological and historical study, a subject field whose theoretical aspect falls within the realm of the theoretical linguistics, whereas its practice pertains to the sphere of applied linguistics. Here you can see the complete definition for lexicography in the parts which is related to. Berknov also refers to the fact that lexicography has been successfully developing its own theory. He also argues that the term lexicography refers to the process, results, and theoretical evaluation of the making of reference works, which represent a wide range of heterogeneous knowledge structures. Berkhanov descriptions allows the expert user comprehensive retrieval of information and gives ample guidance in terms of the extent of information transfer in a dictionary. However, the important role of the user and the real important notion of lexicography as an independent and discipline doesn't come to the fore strongly enough. Scientific discussion. Whereas the above mentioned specialized dictionaries of lexicography, I agree on lexicography having both a practical and a theoretical component. One of the first crucial issues in the discussion of lexicography as found in scientific publications is where the notion of a theory of lexicography is accepted or not. Different approaches prevail, ranging from Atkins and Randall saying with regard to the theory of lexicography that they don't believe that such a thing exists. Bejoint saying, I simply do not believe that there exists a theory of lexicography, and I very much doubt that there can be one. Two lexicographers who firmly believe in lexicographic theory, Weigand in 1989 and others, refer to such points. It is important to note that the supporters of lexicographic theory do not all adhere to the same theory. There are different lexicographic theories, but they all acknowledge the fact that the lexicographic practice is complemented by a theoretical component, and the lexicography with dictionaries as its subject matter should be regarded as an independent discipline. Okay, here we can see some points about the lexicography, which they are not very important. And here we can see other points about lexicography. For example, some person says that lexicography in practice is a form of applied linguistics, and some denies the prospect of a theory of lexicography and believe that the relevant theory is to be found in or via the areas of linguistic and information technology. Here we can see some viewpoints about the lexicography, which some person assumes that lexicography is part of linguistics, but can hardly justify it as being a form of applied linguistics. As a whole, we can say that as a linguistic discipline, lexicography has a rather paradoxical nature. On the one hand, almost everybody will agree to classify lexicography as a form of applied linguistics. Some consider it as a part or branch of applied linguistics, but on the other hand, it is virtually impossible to give an adequate reply to the question what linguistic theory lexicography might be an application of. Some terminologists make a distinction between terminography and lexicography, whilst lexicographers adhering to an inclusive lexicographic theory that makes provision for general and specialized lexicography regarded specialist or LSP lexicography and terminography as synonym. Here you can see some word which stands instead of lexicography. Okay, you can see here some distinguishes about the different type of theory in terms of three set of dictionaries, distinctions, which is general and specific theories, integrated and non-integrated theories, contemplative and transformative theories. This last distinction, which is between contemplative and transformative one, is important for the present discussion. A purely contemplative approach only observes existing dictionaries and theoretical models and is rarely, if ever, put to practice. A transformative approach is innovative, and this type of theory doesn't only interpret and explain lexicography practice, but it transforms it. Okay, you can see some differences about the lexicography, which I think they're not very important. Okay, here we can see some viewpoint about the lexicography, which some persons distinguish between the lexicographic practice, like the cultural practice aimed at the production of dictionaries, and the theoretical domain directed at the lexicography and dictionaries. They clearly state that the theoretical lexicography is not part of applied linguistics. According to the term, to them, lexicography has the following topics as subject matter: the structure of dictionaries, the compilation of dictionaries, lexicography in the actual sense of the word, the use of dictionaries, including aspects of didactic of dictionary use, dictionary criticism, and the history of lexicography. You can see some topics or subject matter connecting to the lexicography, which here again one misses a reference to lexicographic functions. Looking at this diverse and often conflicting interpretation of lexicography, this paper works with the assumption that lexicography has a theoretical and practical component, that different lexicographic theories do exist, and that lexicography is an independent discipline. This point of departure leads to a formulation of the unified and more comprehensive explanation of lexicography. A unified and comprehensive approach. The proposal in this paper should be seen in combination with the currently written papers for these persons. Some of the arguments given in these two papers are presupposed in the current paper. The proposals made here are based on and expands the dictionary article of the lemma, lexicography in the Linguistic Dictionary of Lexicography. There are two types of lexicography. Number one, the development of the theories about and the conceptualization of dictionaries, specifically with regard to the function, structure, and the content of dictionaries. This part of lexicography is known as meta-lexicography or theoretical lexicography. I repeat it again. The development of theories, here it connecting with the development of the theories about and the conceptualization of dictionaries, specifically with regard to the function, structure, and the content of the dictionaries. This part of lexicography is known as meta-lexicography or theoretical lexicography. The planning and compilation of concrete dictionaries. This part of lexicography is known as practical lexicography or the lexicographic practice, which can service the planning and compilation of concrete dictionaries. As seen in the previous sections, there is a definite confusion in the meta-lexicographic discussion regarding the scope of lexicography and the borders with and the relations to other disciplines. As previously remarked, we regard lexicography as an independent discipline that does show some relation to parts of the different other disciplines like information science and like linguistics. Our approach is not the only one. Many people regard lexicography not as an independent discipline but as part of linguistics. Here you can see some points about the lexicography, which some person regard it as a independent discipline, or some consider as a part of linguistics. Other people see part of what we regard as lexicography as terminography or encyclopedology. We do not agree with this approach. More detailed motivation can be found in Brecht's and a brief account thereof in the following paragraph. In particular, we do not see lexicography as a part of lexicology, as is the case with some linguistics and lexicographers. An approach that sees lexicographic theory as a part of lexicology implies that lexicography puts the questions, whereas lexicology provides the answers. We do not believe that this is the case in real practical situation. In contrast to their argument, it is a fact that many lexicologists exclusively use data from dictionaries in their discussion. In the exact opposite way, we regard the relation of terminography to that section of terminology where practical terminology prevails. Contrary to terminologies, we regard terminography and subject field lexicography as synonym expression. They have the same object and aims to describe specialized field, so the specific information need to be to the user can be satisfied. Okay, there are a series of special type of lexicography like linguistic lexicography, subject field lexicography, corpus lexicography. We do not regard all the prevailing subtype as necessary or beneficial to lexicography. However, this will not be discussed in this in detail here. Linguistic lexicography, you should know this definition. Linguistic lexicography is usually understood as a general language lexicography that needs to achieve communicative functions. Subject field lexicography is typically understood as a monolingual lexicography of different subject fields where the lexicography needs to achieve a cognitive function. Finally, encyclopedic lexicography is a type of lexicography that includes both linguistic and subject field lexicography. Therefore, when you want to summarize this article, you should you should mention the definition, the different definition about the lexicography and its types. Here, this paragraph is important too, which define the type of lexicography, which the linguistic lexicography, subject field lexicography, and corpus lexicography. And you should know their definition, which in linguistic lexicography is usually understood as general language lexicography. Okay, therefore another name or another term which stands for linguistic lexicography is general language lexicography, which needs to achieve communicative functions. And here we connect with the communicative functions, but by subject field lexicography, which is understood as the monolingual lexicography of different subject fields, where the lexicography need to be achieved as a cognitive function. And encyclopedic lexicography is the type of lexicography that included both linguistic and subject field lexicography, and it is the combination. Encyclopedic lexicography is the combination of the linguistic and subject field lexicographies. Here we can see another definition for lexicography, which is identify in terms of the number or of object languages. Monolingual. Okay, here we can see another definition and another part of lexicography. Another division for lexicography, which is identify in terms of number of object languages like monolingual, bilingual, or polylingual lexicography. In addition, lexicography is used as a part of compound term when referring to the source material like corpus lexicography. But we have never encountered such terms as informant lexicography or citation lexicography. Also, they could have been constructed accordingly. When the technical aids are put in the center, one refers to computational lexicography. When focusing on the purpose of the lexicography, one talks about the learner lexicography. It is important here, this paragraph is important because you can see some type of lexicography according to their goal. For example, when we don't encounter such a terms as informant lexicography or citation lexicography. Also, they could have been constructed accordingly. When the technical aids are put in the center, one refers to computational lexicography. When focusing on the purpose of the lexicography, one talks about learner lexicography or translation lexicography. Finally, the aim of lexicography becomes the documentation of a specific part of language used for future generalization by having expression like usage lexicography, like the lexicography that accounts for concrete communicative, cognitive, interpretative, or operational needs, or documentation lexicography that develops to solve a national or a general scientific problems. Here are further distinction of this type of, and additional ones can be constructed. Okay, we can see other type of lexicography. Okay, you can see here in this diagram, this figure, which you can see its explanation above this figure. Some aspects of these different type of approaches are illustrated here. Lexicography, which can be practical lexicography or meta-lexicography, which practical lexicography divide into non-scientific or scientific. In scientific, which is linguistic based or lexicographic based. In meta-lexicography, which can serve with the description of existing dictionaries, criticism of existing dictionaries, contemplative or theory construction outgoing from existing dictionaries, transformative, which outgoing from linguistic theories or outgoing from lexicographic theories. Here you can see this diagram or this figure is important because you can see the division of the lexicography in this way, and you should mention to this diagram in your summarization. Here you can see the following figure indicate different approaches regarding the object and function of lexicography. Here we can see the approaches regarding the object and the function of lexicography, which we have lexicography for general language, specialist language, general and specialist language. In general language we have communicative or cognitive, which in communicative we have reception, text production, text correction and translation. In a specialized language we have communicative and cognitive, which is the same as here. And general and specialist language, which is communicative and cognitive, which consists of reception, text production, text correction and translating. Traditionally, lexicography had as its main object to deal with communicative information tools for general language dictionaries. We find this too narrow understanding of lexicography that eschews many very important information tools. We regard lexicographic theory as a discipline not only directed at the production of dictionaries, but in a more general way at the production of the information tools. The transformative approach can produce new ideas to ensure theoretically based products, better dictionaries and other reference and information tools, and can ensure enhanced information retrieval. Here you can see the references of this article. At the first time when you look at this movie or when you read this matter, it may be its understanding may be hard for you, because for the first time some terms are not clear for you, and you should read this article many times to learn about the lexicography. But you can summarize it in just in 2 pages, and you should mention just the definition in whole about the lexicography, and you should mention its characteristic, and you should mention the purpose of lexicography. And these 2 diagrams are important too. and I want you to mention them in your summarization. These two diagrams are important too, which divide the lexicography in a clear way for you, and you can use it in your summarization. Please read them and ask me your question. I told you that at the first time it may be hard for you to learn the matter. Please read them many times and ask your questions through the WhatsApp group.